My metric is always, what do our customers deserve and what is fair to them? My whole thing when I started the company was, I feel like customers are constantly treated like they're stupid. And I want to treat our customers like intelligent, thinking beings who deserve the best with very hard-earned money. And they don't deserve really stale moringa.
Imagine paying your suppliers 6 times more than all of your competitors and still being able to build a profitable, viable, growing business. That's what Sana at Diaspora Co has done. This is an incredible interview. She's an amazing entrepreneur. We talk about how to build vertically integrated supply chains at source. It's a super unique business model. We talked about how to balance strong ideals and mission-led businesses with business realities and where they often come into conflict, and how D2C brands too often overlook the importance of HR and how much leverage it can really give you in your business. There's a lot of practical wisdom here. You're going to learn a ton. Ladies and gentlemen, Sana from Diaspora Co. Sana, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it. Before we get into the nitty gritty of some of those key moments in your business, it was make it or break it and you had to go in different directions. Maybe just tell us a little bit about Diaspora Co, how it started, where you were, where you are, where it's going, just to give everybody a sense of the business and how it's built up.
I mean, the short version is that I was 23. I was wildly idealistic. I was working in specialty food, and that I was working at Buy Right in San Francisco, which is like a farm-to-table high-end grocer. And I loved it, but I was finding that whilst people knew exactly where their peaches were coming from and where their garlic was coming from, when it came to anything from the spice aisle, nobody had a clue. So I was talking to the best chefs in the world, the chefs who really created American modern cuisine. And they would all kind of shrug when I asked about spices. And there was actually a pivotal moment where John Beaver, who is the CEO of Oaktown Spices, which is a wonderful, now kind of competitor / colleague spice company, where he looked at me and he was like, if you can figure out how to source beautiful, fresh, regeneratively grown spices, heck, I'll buy from you. And I was like, well, that's wild. You do this for a living and you can't find it? And the magic for me was that I was born and raised in India, and I speak 4 different Indian languages, and I studied food studies and supply chains in college. So in a lot of ways, if anybody were to go back to the birthplace of spices, which is South Asia, India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and find farmers and figure out how to build a supply chain, it was kind of what I was built for as a 23-year-old punk. That was almost 9 years ago now, but essentially we now work with 140 farms across India and Sri Lanka. We've paid out over $3 million to small regenerative family farms, and we bring really fresh, highly flavorful spices directly to home cooks and chefs. And most spices in the grocery store are 7 to 10 years old. So we're able to get things to people within 6 to maybe max 9 weeks of harvest, which is very different.
I mean, let's start there. Your product in many ways is the supply chain. You built this supply chain to get spices to market faster than anyone else. How did you do that?
I think wild idealism again. So when I first started researching spices in 2017, I couldn't even find a standard for what makes black pepper high quality versus low quality. All the stuff out there was stuff that was written by the British 150 years ago because they wanted to sell more pepper for more money, not because they cared about how high quality it was. So I was entering an industry which unlike coffee or unlike chocolate, there was no standards or no metrics. So I would basically go to a pepper farmer who I had either found on Instagram or WhatsApp or via word of mouth, or just show up at a random region that grows pepper and start looking. I would show up at these farms and I'd be like, okay, how are you doing things? And then together, over the course of years, we would develop a quality standard for growing, harvesting, and processing. So at age 23, I thought that developing those quality standards for 30 different spices would take me a couple years at most. It very much took 5.5 years to build our supply chain. There was a point when I was actually I would join a WhatsApp group that was for regenerative farmers across India. And I would just command F, certain words in 6 different languages. So I would command F fennel, which in Gujarati is variali, in Hindi is saunf. And I would be is there anybody growing fennel? And then if any of them, if I found a hit via command F, I would send them like voice notes into the void and be like, "Hi, can I talk to you?" So it was really cobbled together. It was really scrappy. Now, obviously, like 9 years in, we have a reputation, and I would say like most regenerative farmers in South Asia, but across India, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, know about us, which is such a privilege. And so we get inbounds, right? So I'm dealing with anywhere from like I deal with probably 1,000 inbounds a year, and it's our sourcing team's job to vet those and make sure that our supply chain is rock solid.
Hi, I'm David. I'm the president of Highbeam. But before that, I built a brand called David's Tea from 0 to 200 million in sales, and I took it public on the NASDAQ. Highbeam is a banking and cash management platform for consumer brands. It's the bank I wish I had when I was building David's Tea. We'll turn banking from a cost center for you today into a profit center for you tomorrow. We'll make you better cash back on ad spend. We'll maximize your yield on idle working capital through daily automated sweeps. And we have a host of AI-powered tools to save you a boatload of time. Check us out at highbeam.com and let's talk. How are these people shipping to market before you, right? You talk about that other spice company and spices being years on the shelf and losing that freshness. You're getting it to market in 6 weeks, in the best case. What existed before and what did you change?
So essentially, spices have been being traded across the world for thousands of years. Yeah.
Right.
I looked back and I found that 3,000 years ago, the west coast of India and ancient Rome were trading black pepper, which is wild. So like cacio e pepe is one of like the most ancient, the root, especially of like the cheese and the pepper, is one of the most ancient recipes in the world, which is wild. But a lot changed about 600 years ago. So when the British and the Portuguese and the French and the Dutch started showing up to India, Indonesia, Sri Lanka to colonize, they wanted to build a system that really profited them. So they would go to the farm and then they would force the farm to sell it to their local auction house, like in their village, not in the big city, but like very much in their village. They would even like pick it up from the farm sometimes and be like, we'll just grab it from you. You don't even have to dry it. And then the local village auction house will sell it to the bigger city. The bigger city will sell it to, maybe an exporter who like holds on to it for a couple years until they get a better price for it, because spices are actually traded on the commodity market. So, you're looking at the price and being like, oh, wait, let me hold on another season or let me sell, because there's no incentive towards selling it at its most fresh. The British actually built a system being like, just sell it when you can make the most money. And then eventually, maybe 7 to 10 years later, it makes its way from an importer, in, let's say, Port of New York. Port of New York, it then will travel to a warehouse in New Jersey. It'll live there for a season. From there, Whole Foods will put in a bid and say, actually, like, we need our shelves full of black pepper. And then it'll get restocked. And then it'll live in our shelves for, I don't know, another like 2 to 4 years. And with spices, like what you're looking for is volatile oils. So I always say with spices, like fat is flavor. But if you have like a 10-year-old product, there's no volatile oil left. So you're truly consuming like dust. So what we're really focusing on is we're doing lab tests to figure out the volatile oil content, and we're trying to get it to customers while the oil content is at its peak, because more oil, more flavor.
I mean, it's very similar in tea. And I've been to the countries
exactly.
you're talking about, India and Sri
Yeah.
Lanka, for tea. And so you're going direct to the farmers and you're importing it right after harvest. But the flip side of that is you're now expanding, you're going into Amazon, you're in 1,000 doors. Buying is really hard for those channels. You've got to now, you're either going to buy too much or too little. How are you thinking about this as, you obviously have to have some level of inventory to service these channels. So how do you prevent yourself from becoming a warehouse that has spices sitting there for season after season?
Honestly, I would say from 2021 to 2024, that was our biggest challenge. Was I had never forecasted before. My ops director had never forecasted before. And we made a lot of mistakes. Like, I think we have dumped more moringa powder into the Pacific Ocean, legally per the FDA, than like I ever thought I would, you know? I've had to burn a lot of cumin in my time. Again, like FDA approved. We have gotten a lot better at it as the years go on. And we've also learned that it's better to be conservative and to sell out. I need to service my Amazon channel no matter what, because if something goes out of stock on Amazon, I lose my flywheel of momentum immediately. Like the algorithm on Amazon actually punishes me and I will like fall in the listings, right? So I know Amazon I can never be out of stock with, right? Then there's Whole Foods. I know that if I have an empty shelf slot at Whole Foods, I'm going to be penalized and momentum drops off. So those two channels, nobody's touching kind of ever. But our D2C channel is kind of where we have a little bit more slack, right? So for example, popcorn spice, we have a delicious popcorn seasoning. It used to be, I don't know, like our 20th best spice or seasoning. Like it really wasn't up there. I made it, you know, for my daughter for fun, and then Whole Foods liked it. And then about middle of last year, it became Whole Foods' number one SKU. And then it became our number two SKU underneath only black pepper, which is nuts. Like I never saw that coming. We sold out of popcorn spice by November. And it meant that like going into peak December season, it didn't have popcorn seasoning, and it sucks. But I'm going to reforecast into this year, and you know, we've like upped the blend. We have new packaging for it. So I think we've had to make our peace with the fact that when you have as many SKUs as we do, some things will sell out, and that's fine. But I would rather that than drowning moringa powder in the Pacific Ocean, you know?
Take us back to having to make the decision. You know, you've built your entire business model on this idea of freshness, on speed to market, on the supply chain, and we'll talk about how you're paying these farmers more as well in a sec. But take us back to that moment. You've got the world supply moringa or cumin. What are you thinking? Like, you know, what are your choices, you know, in terms of how you make that decision, and how did you ultimately end up with the decision that you made?
So I think one, I was obsessed with our moringa powder because it was this farmers cooperative that was growing it under beetle leaf trees. And so there would be beetle leaf climbing up this vine, moringa shading the beetle leaf, and coconut on top of it. So it was this beautiful ecosystem. And then when they dried and ground the moringa powder, like I swear to God, there was like notes of white chocolate in this powder. And I didn't, you know, really use moringa or know what it was for. I just thought it was beautiful. And I was seeing the rise of moringa as a wellness ingredient. I thought it was a great matcha substitute if you wanted a caffeine-free substitute. And so I was bullish on it. I didn't even buy that much. I think I bought like half a ton, which, you know, in the world of spices is nothing. And then nobody bought it. Or like, you know, a decent amount of like core adopters bought it, but not enough to justify half a ton. And eventually the Best By date that we had put into place rolled around, and I had two decisions in front of me. Either I could extend the Best By date, because in spices there is no Best By date. Like we're making it up, right? It's a shelf stable product. Like I could just stick a sticker on and be like, it's good for 4 more years. Ta-da. But what we did is we lab tested it at the 3-year mark, and we checked the volatile oil content, and it had dropped from 10% to 4.5%. And for me, that meant that like if I was selling somebody a product for the same price when it was like less than half as flavorful, right? And that just didn't feel right or fair. And so we like did the math on it, and we were like, actually, I think we're just going to take the L on it. And we asked the FDA, what do we do? And they were like, actually, you can just like put it in the ocean. We were like, are you sure? Like, there's other things I'm sure we could think of. And they were like, no, ocean's good. So it was very like Boston Tea Party, drowning like large amounts of green powder into the ocean. But ultimately, I think my metric is always, what do our customers deserve and what is fair to them? My whole thing when I started the company was I don't want to be like, I feel like customers are constantly treated like they're stupid. And I want to treat our customers like intelligent, thinking beings who deserve the best with very hard-earned money. They don't deserve like really stale moringa.
I mean, the elephant in the room here is like, there's obviously major financial implications to this, right?
Huge.
Right. So talk us through that. Like, what you're faced with this decision. You want to do right by the customer. But
Yeah.
this is a huge hit to you. Does this put enormous strain financially on the business?
Tremendously. I mean, my COO, Win, and I mean, Win's really like the high beam person here, where she's like on our cash flow dashboard every day. But she basically is like, Sana, you can take 5 big swings per year at the most in a crazy world, because 2 of those are going to bite us in the ass. And 3 of those might work, but really one's going to work. So we can only afford 2 flops a year. Now we've gotten a lot better at like budgeting for the big swings and being like, one's going to kill it and one's going to tank us. I know that the year that we had to take that big loss on the moringa, we actually made the New York Times gift guide for our turmeric. And so there's always the like magic of when you have 30 SKUs, the one SKU that like saves you and the other SKU that like has completely just like whacked you sideways. So I know that we made up for moringa losses in turmeric sales.
Let's dig in more on the economics. I mean, you're paying, I think, 6 times more the commodity price for some of these spices.
Yeah.
There's a fair trade program in place. It's a 15% premium where it's an organization. You can just pay into it. They put it in as a collective. Most people think you're actually giving subsidies to the farmers, but you're not. You're putting it into a pool and they're building a road or buying computers. But you saw this. You're like, no, I'm going to pay, never mind 15%, 6x,
Yeah.
which is a huge premium. How do you make that work?
Yeah. I mean, okay, well, before I get into the math, we've been in business for nearly 9 years and we have never lost a supplier or a farm partner. We've never had a farm partner leave us. So my supply chain is so rock solid. Like, I have never had an FDA recall. I've never had a quality control issue that's been devastating and I think all of that leads back to that price difference, right? So when I first visited our turmeric farmer, who was the first farmer I ever started working with, his name's Prabhu Kasraneni. I went to see Prabhu and I was like, okay, how much can you give me this beautiful turmeric for? And he was like, well, ma'am, like the market price is about 75 rupees a kilogram, which is, about 80 cents a kilogram. And given that, I would like a 40% premium on that. So yeah, give me, somewhere in the 100 and something range. And I kind of looked at him and I was like, okay, but what's your water bill? What's your labor cost? Like, why are you 3 generations in debt? Every year you have survived by leasing off more land. Like if your turmeric is the best I've ever had in the country, and I want you to be in business forever. If you're leasing off land every year to make your business model work, like you're going to be gone in 5 years. And he sort of just looked at me shell shocked. And then we sat down and we did the math. Like we literally counted how much of his irrigation is rain fed, how many tankers of water is he bringing in, what is his harvest labor, what is his seasonal labor. And then we were like, wait, like you have to be making a minimum of 400 rupees per kilogram on this product. We now pay him about 650, but back then it was 450. Then I actually went about and like built the entire business on that price point. So like I was like, okay, my margin, my like 50% gross margin target has to happen on top of that. Like that's not what I pay my farmers is never something that gets squeezed. Getting like the really good economics on top of it is my job. And we've had to make a lot of sacrifices, I think, to do that. So we used to have beautiful glass jar packaging. If I need a profitable margin, I couldn't afford glass packaging. And I had to make the tough decision to move to recycled aluminum packaging. It's actually great for the product because it keeps it fresher for longer. But on the shelf, like it doesn't look as premium. So then I have to use my label and like gold foil and like color and like great design to make it look more premium, right? So I think we've just had to be really creative about where will we make concessions and where is there absolutely no room for playing. A good example, our saffron is the highest grade of saffron available in the world. We sent it to a lab in Berlin and they didn't have a scale on their like crocin content scale to measure it. And crocin content is like the oil that comes out of saffron that gives you that like, magical taste. And we pay, I think at this point, probably about a 25% premium. So it's not crazy. Why is it only 25 instead of 6x or 10x? Because saffron costs about $2,000 per kilogram, right? So 25% premium on $2,000 per kilogram, pretty good.
A big number. Yeah.
Whereas with salt, we're paying a 10x premium because our salt is from a region that it's basically like a salt desert, and they use solar pumps to pump salty water out from under the desert, and then they dry it on these beds that they create, and then they hand pound the crystals. So it's just got the most beautiful texture. And we were like, listen, salt's something that we can actually afford to pay 10x for. Like, it's fine. Our customers will buy it, and they do. So yeah, I think over the past 6 years, it's been this question of what is fair? What can we afford? And therefore, what do we have to do to build a profitable business on top of that?
You're obviously an incredible salesperson. You know how to romanticize the spices, which is key to the game. I mean, I was in the tea game. It's the same idea.
Yeah.
But you said something really interesting in there. You said, we never had a recall or an FDA issue. It made me think, by giving these farmers such a big premium,
Yeah.
are you actually able to suck other costs out of your supply chain that you otherwise would have? Like at David's Tea, like I had a whole tea room, an internal team that was running all kinds of tests and tasting for, it's an agricultural product, right? So season to season can be different. You want to make sure you're staying true to the product the customer is expecting. And do you pass on those expenses? Like, what are you getting on the cost structure that's coming out because you're paying these farmers such a big premium?
So we don't process anything in-house ourselves. Yeah. So conventionally, a farmer would grow chilies, and then they would sell them whole, and somebody else would grind them, right? We gave our farm partner, the Narne family, a loan to actually build a mill on their farm. And then we pay them that extra $1 per kilogram to mill for us. And we do that with every single farm we work with. And what we found is the final responsibility for the end product has to live with the farmer if they're going to be proud and responsible for their product, right? Otherwise, they can like throw their hands up and be like, oops, mold happened. I don't know where. Could have happened en route. So it's a win-win. I get to make sure that our farm partners are responsible and accountable for the product they are growing. And I get to pay them more per kilogram than I otherwise would be able to. And in a lot of ways, that de-risks them because, so for example, our chili harvest in 2023 failed 100% crop failure. Devastating, right?
Was it in Whole Foods too? Like, is this, you got buyers counting on this?
No. We had about like 4 metric tons that buyers were counting on that we had to just like throw our hands up and say, we don't have anything yet. But here's the answer. Because they had a mill on the farm, they were then able to go out in their village essentially, or in the district rather, and find other regenerative farmers and say, sell us your chilies, we'll mill them. And they were so proud of the quality of their product that they made sure that the replacement year met their quality standard. Like I will always say that Hanumantrao Narne, this 85-year-old chili farmer, is my best quality control. Like he is so proud about what he puts out into the world. And so I think the chili harvest ended up being about 3 months late and from a different farm, but we were still able to pay the Narne family an income for all the milling. So they didn't go without,
Wow.
Yeah. So we found like creative ways to kind of work through a lot of this.
I mean, that's more than creative. You basically vertically integrated at the source.
Every single farm. Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible.
I will say, tea is really tough to process. There is like technique and extreme like large manufacturing and machinery that's needed. We work with a tea garden in Assam, and I've seen it. With most spices, we've been able to find really low cost ways to run processing at like far above FDA quality standards, which feels really good. I think the final point about like what we save by doing it with this model, for me is obviously 1, they're processing, they're responsible, but then 2, the amount of other companies out there that have to have like 6 backup suppliers because at any given time the market might change and their supplier will leave them for somebody else. We don't have to do that. We have 1 backup supplier for every spice to de-risk it, but that's it. And like I barely use them, if ever. So I think just like the cost of certainty and security is worth enough to me.
I mean, it's even more than that. You basically show up. You're like, I'm going to put you in business, and I'm going to let you capture more of the value add as the product goes to market. In fact, I'm going to let you capture all of the value add until you send it to me, and I give it directly to the customer.
Yep, exactly.
In the research, I was looking through your notes, and you had this moment in COVID where I imagine trust with these farmers is everything for you. You're paying them more. You're financing them. You're building long-term relationships. COVID hits, they've already started production. The world is shut down. You don't think you can sell it. Take us back to that moment? What do you do?
Oh God. Well, first of all, I spent January 1st to March 1st, 2020, visiting over 45 farms. I had been like on a rampage where I was like, 2020 is the year we're going to grow. We did grow, but not how I was expecting. And so I was literally like going across India and Sri Lanka, like giving out purchase orders, being like, you give me some, you give me some, you give me some. March 9th, I get COVID and I'm sitting in India. I finally like claw my way back to America at the beginning of April. And all of our farm partners are calling me on repeat. I've lost my sense of smell, taste. I'm barely functional. Like my lung capacity is shot. And they're all WhatsApping me on repeat, being like, what are we going to do? And I would say that Diaspora probably had like 6K customers at that point in time. And like for context, we now have about 150K customers, So like we were tiny. Our 2019 revenue was about 360K. So little business. And I made this very radical decision that in retrospect, I don't know how I had the audacity. Like I feel terror in my heart thinking about it. To put on Instagram that, hey, I'm going to try to fundraise 100K. And that will allow me to pay these 6 farms 100% advances on their spices. But I have no idea when these spices will reach you. Like, so if you as a customer are prepaying for these spices, it could be 3 months, it could be 6 months, it could be next year. So if you're in a hurry, don't give me your money. But this is what I'm trying to do. And like, these are the farmers that I'm trying to support. Like pre-order if you want. And between April 1 to October 1, we got 20,000 customers over that time. And every month from April to October, I was writing them an earnest email, like these customers being like, this is why you're still not going to get your spices. And this is why you're still not going to get your spices. And to the point where people started, like, there was Reddit threads being like, this is a scam. Like, this is like a large scale grift to like take all our money. And I had to literally like I had our ops and export manager start sending videos of him like masked and hazmat suited on his scooter going to the port and like bribing all of the port officials with food, like with mutton thalis, in order to get our spices cleared. And we finally were able to ship out every single product end of October. And we did 1.7 million in revenue that year. And it was me and 2 part-time people. So it was such a risk to be like, yes, pre-order for spices that I don't know when I can get you. And I think by being really transparent and really honest and vulnerable, we built a community. Like our best customers today are still the people who were reading my like frantic at my desk newsletters in 2020.
And what were your options? Like, what if you didn't do that?
At that point, I wasn't even paying myself a salary. So like I was still like photographing and like, doing every other side hustle on the side to pay myself. I could have told our farm partners, we're in the largest global pandemic of our lifetimes. And so, yeah, tough potatoes, I know I promised you something, but like, I can't make it work. Well, let's touch base in a year. And I think I would have lost all credibility. And those relationships would have been burned. I actually did do it to one farmer, if I'm being honest. There was a black cardamom farmer in Sikkim, which is all the way in the northeast of India. Really, it's like tea country. And he was sending me a lot of like really sort of flirtatious selfies. And I felt very confused by that. And I didn't want to do business with somebody like a farmer who, instead of sending me photos of black cardamom, was like sending me selfies. So I kind of ghosted him during the pandemic. I just like let it go. And then 2 years later, I was on a work trip to Sikkim and I ran into him like out of nowhere. I was at the market I think I was buying like perilla seeds. And I ran into this guy and he was like, ma'am, I'm Mahindra. Like, I was your farmer. You left me. And I kind of like. And then I was like, listen, like, I left you because like you were sending me like all these strange photos. And he had a really sweet response where he was like, you had never met me. I wanted to make sure you knew my face so you could trust me and that you knew that there was a real person behind this. And it was so much more innocent than like my brain had made it out to be. And I felt so awful that I had like deprived this man of buying his black cardamom crop for 3 years. And like it took a while to rebuild that relationship because he just felt like I ditched him, you know?
You've got these principles a business and you started the conversation saying I was wildly idealistic. Business has some harsh realities to it that every entrepreneur knows about if they've been doing it for not even long enough, if just they've been doing it for a short period. They hit you really fast and furiously. Talk to me about how wildly idealistic are you now? How has the realities of business shaped you? And how do you reconcile kind of the mission where sometimes it's in huge conflict with some of those obvious business decisions that are really important?
I think the question I'm often asking myself is, how far will you go for the survival and the growth of the company? And will it alienate like your own conscience? So there have definitely been points where our like super radical, incredible early adopters have seen decisions that I have made and been like, you have lost your way. I'm not going to support you anymore. I disagree with how you're running your business. And I have to decide, like, can I like hold that and keep moving, or should it be a reckoning? And I think the best example I can give is as a progressive queer company that like really wants to put good into the world, why do business with Amazon or Whole Foods?
Right.
Everything we know about Amazon warehouses is that there are workplace violations left and right. There are labor violations left and right. Like, I think we can just be honest about that. Like, I do business with them and like they're not great. And when we first got onto Amazon, I didn't even want to advertise it because I was like, we're going to get canceled so hard on the internet for this. And ultimately, I had to, think on it, ponder on it. And the answer I came up with is diaspora as an existential point. What we have is an incredible supply chain and an incredible business. What we don't have is top of funnel access to new customers. And Amazon is like one of the few channels that I can think of that will just push people into our funnel. I can then own them in my funnel and make sure that they like are full diaspora customers and, know our values and become on board with us. But like, I really, as like a small business in 2020, back then 2023, do not have very many other opportunities to get new customers in. Like, it's either get new customers or you are going to run out of money in 6 months and need to close down. And so in 2023, we got on Amazon. And to this day, it's not a huge channel for us, right? Like, we spend the exact amount of ad dollars on it that keeps it profitable as a channel. I'm not willing for it to be an unprofitable channel, which a lot of other businesses take a different decision and say, actually, like, burn money on Amazon, but like push people in, boost top line revenue, let's go. We keep it profitable, but it also is, to this day, like, it introduces more people to the diaspora ecosystem. I think other than Instagram, it's Amazon. It's just Instagram and Amazon. And it's not like Meta is like some hero of an organization. So like, we're all picking our devils. We're all existing within, this capitalist structure that is what it is. So yeah, do my like radical Oakland queer friends like think that being on Amazon is the worst thing in the world? Probably. Do I regret it? Not at all.
We went through this at David's Tea too. I mean, how we started was certainly not what it became. And you've got to at some point decide you can't have an impact without scale. It's very difficult to impact. I mean, you're primarily trying to help these farmers make a better living. And the best way to do that is sell a lot of spices.
Well, something that we have talked about a lot is, I started the company when I was 23. So like my priorities at 23 were pretty different than my priorities at 32 with 2 kids. And so I think the the shift that has happened for me is I had to really sit with why am I doing this? What is the point of diaspora? And we did a social impact study, and we basically looked at every link across our supply chain, right? So currently our farm partners, the 140 farmers that we work with, they make 10x more than the national farmer average in India. So we know that we are like transforming lives and changing what like the next generation will encounter through our work with our farm partners. But when we look at their workers, like the farm workers, we are paying between $3.2 to $4 a day. Not us, but our farm partners. The global poverty line for like a living wage, so what would be considered a living wage globally, is $5 a day. And so I started doing the math where I was like, what is it going to take for every single farm in our supply chain to pay above $5 a day? Like bring the entire like 4,000 regenerative acres above the living wage. We would have to grow 10x the scale that we are today. And so that's my goal, where I'm like, okay, let's grow 10x. Let's go. Like I'll figure out how to do it. So I think I really didn't build this company to get rich, though I think I should be compensated well for it. But I did do it so that we could like really build a system that was equitable and transformative. I think the final other point is where you take capital from. And I think as like a young founder, often it's easy to get like swayed and excited by seeing all the venture and private equity dollars out there. And like, I think venture is great. I think private equity is great. I think if I had taken either venture or private equity, it would have been like the single most catastrophic thing I could have done to our business. And so being really thoughtful about taking values aligned slow capital for a business that is values first and inherently slow because our product grows in the ground, I think was the most useful thing I've ever done. Because I definitely saw all my friends getting the like 5 to 6 million seed checks and then throwing big parties and having flashy launches and like expanding into 20,000 doors. And it like looked pretty cool. And I think I had to be really honest with myself that like we will achieve scale, but not like that.
Well, let's go back there. You bootstrapped for the first 5 years and then you raised money. And I believe you raised from dozens of individual angel investors. You have what it's called a party round, where you this huge long cap table. I mean, you had so many different options at that point. First of all, why raise money to begin with, and why go about it that way? And then what was your criteria?
Yeah, so up until 2022, we had been growing. I think we grew like 20x between 2018 to 2022. It was just like it looked like this, but without pre-orders, my cash flow was shot because I was paying farmers advances. Then it would take, anywhere from 2 to 3 months to reach me. Then I would have to sell it to the customer. So with the only way my model was working is I was taking money in advance from people and expecting them to wait anywhere from like 3 to 9 months, right? You can't scale a company that like requires people to wait 3 to 9 months for like what they cook with every day. So it was very simple. It was that I needed better cash flow, and I needed a line of credit. Like that. So I was like, okay, pretty straightforward. We're a profitable business. We need a line of credit. We can like show how we'll pay it back. And not a single person would lend to us because they looked at our cap table and they were like, it's too risky. Like I need equity partners in here to actually like signal some amount of like, I guess, somebody else has vetted this and said that you guys are legit. I was like, could somebody just vet it without giving me money? That's an option, right? But no. And I think at the same time, I was barely paying myself. I had a really scrappy team. I'd hired a scrappy team that like were mostly like young women who were super resilient and good at figuring things out, but none of us had any experience. And so I was just at the point where I was like, if this is going to grow, I need people who know what they're doing. And I need to not worry about cash every minute of every day. And so we initially actually fundraised from just one family office. And on my first meeting with that family office, I said, listen, like I might sell the company. I might run it forever. Whatever I do, like my farmers are always going to come first. And this is not going to we're not going to do 100 million in revenue. We're just not. Like maybe in 30 years, but not in my lifetime, I don't think. And they were like, sounds good. Here's $1 million.
Can you share their number and email address on this podcast? Because I bet
Right.
there's a lot of listeners that would love to meet them.
And I think the way I found them, though, and I think what's important to share with other founders is I asked every founder friend and every peer for who they knew. And I was really clear in what I was looking for. So, and that weeded out a lot of people, right? Like I had a lot of conversations with incredible funds who took one look at me and said, no, thank you. Not interested in your unscalable model. I mean, scalable, but, not giving you like a 5x return in 5 years, or 10x return in 5 years. So first we started with a family office. And then I realized that the best people to invest with us are operator angels. And so, for example, today, Tyler, who runs Salt and Straw Ice Cream, is both one of our investors and our best wholesale customer. Shelly, who runs Justa and Jelena, the restaurants in LA, are some of our best restaurant customers and our investors. And so it just gave all of our partners who already believed in our work skin in the game. So I ended up doing a roll-up vehicle with about 75 angel investors. And honestly, I would say for like our business, what's been wonderful about it is one, they know where to stop, they know what they have control over and what they don't. And like I write them a quarterly report and they respond to it. And if they have any questions and want to chat, I will always make myself available. But it's really been so useful. I have an angel investor who I had never met. We had one phone call. He wrote me a $50K check. And then when I was trying to hire my sales team, he led the entire hiring process because like he's a sales expert. He was just like, I love you guys. I'd love to do this. I want to see y'all win. And he was an operator, so he knew how to do it, The chair of my board is currently advising us on like how to open our brick and mortar because like you, he ran like a really primary tea company. So it's just been like, I know that you've asked this before of what advice would I give other entrepreneurs? And my big one has always been ask for help and ask for lots of it. Like I went to art school. I don't have a business degree. And I feel like what's worked is that I'm always like trying to find the best person to help me.
I mean, I've done angel investing. I've both raised from angels and been the angel. And I'm picturing you coming into the office and telling me, we're not going to make a lot of money here probably. And why were they investing? Did they see this as philanthropic, or did they kind of call your bluff and they're like, you know what? You're actually really authentic. You're doing this the right way. The model actually is really smart. You're building supply chain as source. We actually think you're wrong. Like how was it sort of this reverse psychology that played out, or did they view it as we're just going to do this because we believe in what you're doing. We just like it.
I mean, I never said we weren't going to make money, to be clear. I was clear that we would make money and that there was a growth trajectory, but I wanted to really temper expectations on how much money and how fast.
Right.
So I was saying we will grow like this. We will not grow like this. And I think a lot of, initially when I was having angel conversations, I was getting introduced to a lot of tech people. And I had to keep like driving home. Software sales and spice sales are not the same thing. And there was a lot of pressure, I think, especially I live in Menlo Park. Like I live in the heart of it. So I think there was a lot of assumption that it would be parallel. So I would almost come out really strong on how much like we wouldn't make that much money and then show them the numbers and be like, but it's still a pretty good amount of money, so that people just knew from the get-go where we were coming from a values point of view.
I mean, it's interesting. And you're raising at a time where people were treating consumer brands as SaaS businesses and giving ridiculous valuations that I'm sure many people listening right now are still trying to get out from underneath. You mentioned something about being an art student, not really having this business background, coming in, building this up slowly, and then finding yourself in a real going concern that was growing fast.
Yeah.
I think I read that you hired one of your close friends, right? Who, as an operations manager. What was that like hiring? That can go wrong real fast in a lot of cases.
So the background on Win, we weren't close friends, but our story is unique in that in 2016, I graduated college and I wanted a job in the food industry. And I found this really cool cacao importer online called Meridian Cacao. And it was run by this guy called Gino. I was too intimidated to email Gino directly. So I found the one person I saw on LinkedIn that was on his team, Win McCauley. And I emailed her and I was like, I want to intern. I'll work for free. Like, I just need to learn. And she was super sweet. And she wrote me back and she was like, listen, buddy, like, this is a 3-person company. I do not have an internship role. I do not have a job, but here's some other job postings. And she like spent the next 6 months just like sweetly forwarding me job descriptions. And I ended up applying for my first job to one of the JDs that she sent me. And that was Byright here in San Francisco. And I started working there. And so I just kept in touch with her. And then every time I would go up to Portland, I would like ask if she wanted to get coffee just to chit chat and just to hang. And I think we became like good friends. I trusted her. She was a lot older. I think she is about 6 years older than me. And I started Diaspora. We kept chit-chatting. We would like send like export-import memes to each other sometimes. That was the extent of our relationship. And then in 2021, I put out a job description for an ops manager role. Wynne Macaulay had not done any ops at that point in time. She'd worked for a cocoa importer and a coffee importer in sales roles. And she calls me and she was like, listen, I know I don't have any ops experience. Give me a project. I will do it for free and I will prove to you how good I am. And then you should hire me. And I was just like, why do you want to work with me? I have no employees. I don't know anything. I'm several years younger than you. And she just believed in what we were doing. And I think she believed in herself too. And so I gave her this really hard test of like setting us up with an ERP system and like an inventory management system. And she did it. We still use the same app and like the same system today. And Wynne Macaulay became our ops manager, and then she became my ops director. And now she is the COO of Diaspora Co. And probably the second largest shareholder at the company outside of our investors and me. And she very much runs it, right? Like I do marketing, sales, and sourcing, and she does ops, finance, and some parts of sales. The magic, I would say, is that once we started working together, we established really clear boundaries. So Wynne and I, when we're on a Zoom call and when it's just her and I, we will talk about everything. Like I, the other day was telling her I got a UTI. She was telling me about like her doctor's appointments. But outside of work, we don't play. We know that we are like each other's family and like kind of number one person at work, but not outside of it. And we just realized that we have to have like some space from each other, and doing everything all the time is too much overlap. Actually, on accident, we both ended up on the same island in Washington one summer for our summer vacation. Completely like we both like biked onto this campground and on Lopez Island, Washington. And I was like, oh God, like I work with you all day. And now I'm on this island, like doing my 4th of July holiday with you too. And we actually talked about it. And we were like, I think I love you. And we're going to stay apart from each other for this week because I'm going to see you on Monday morning anyway. And so we just kind of avoided each other at the campground. And all of our friends were so like weirded out by it, where they were like, she's right there. Like she's at the other fireplace. Let's hang with her. But yeah, I think we've just found like good rules that work for us. And I do feel I got really, really lucky in that Wynne Macaulay took a chance on me.
It's an amazing story. I'm thinking about you now, and the business is growing fast for you. And what a lot of founders come up against is this idea that the people that got you where you are often aren't the ones that can help you get to the next stage. We all have a ceiling, right? Have you had to deal with that yet? And how are you thinking about that, and if you haven't?
Yeah, that is 100% true. I think Wynne and I are the two people who have stayed. Wynne, me, and Syed, who's our India operations director, are our 3 original team members. And nobody else is from our original team. And that was really hard to reconcile with. But, if I look back at 23, I had no management experience. When people talked about like culture, I didn't know what that meant. And I was a people pleaser. And so I wanted to make my employees, who were often the same age as me and therefore my peers, I wanted to make them like me and I wanted to make them happy. And that meant that like culture went awry. It didn't have the authority and the leadership that I needed to have. And it led me to hire people and then let people run departments that were ultimately not the right fit for the stage of the company we were getting to. And so I would say over the past 3 years, there's been some pretty difficult exits. I feel really good, and I can feel like I can, say it on record that like every exit was done with grace and care and kindness. And in every exit, I hoped that they would actually like flap their wings and like accomplish way more than I was able to give them. But yeah, I think we've had in the past 3 years about 7 exits that were like led by me saying, you're great. Like you have been so valuable here and this just isn't working anymore and you got to go. And I trimmed down our America team from 10 people to 2 people. And I built up our India team from 2 people to 25 people. So I actually completely reorganized the business, but I did it from a place of like much stronger leadership and like understanding of the boundaries I wanted to set. And as a result, I really think that right now the culture at the company and like the way that everybody's working together is better than ever. So I am a believer in like the people that got you to, a certain stage will not be the people that take you to the next stage.
It's never black and white when you have to let someone go. It's always so gray, right? There's so many things that you're like, well, they do this well, but and you're not sure. How do you, for someone listening, trying to figure out what to do next on one of those people that in their gut, they're just like, I don't know. How do you think about that? Like, when do you decide when the moment is to make that decision and do it?
One of the best like hires that we made is we started working with fractional HR consultants in the US and in India. And I started having my HR consultant be kind of openly accessible to the team. And so, one, she coached me a ton and helped me build that muscle for what is the kind of culture I want to build, what is acceptable team behavior, when is the emotional labor involved in somebody's performing at a high level, too much emotional labor. And I think what I came down to is it's not worth the heartache. Yeah. So you can be great at your job, but if you're giving me heartache, you're not worth it. If I'm staying up at night, like prodding my partner and being like, hey, love, can I tell you about this problem I'm having? You're not worth it. Like my sleep more worth it. And that sounds selfish, but I think like for the overall health of the business, that is non-negotiable. And it took me a long time to get to that point because I'd be like, well, Sana, you're the difficult one. And like, maybe like you're the problem. And sure, I'm probably the problem. And I can work on being less of a problem, but I still run the company. So if we're having a problem, I'm going or they're going, but if I go, the company doesn't work. So they're going, right? So I think I just had to start being like a little less obsessed with being liked and a little bit more realistic about like what my role was here. And that helped a lot.
It's an interesting move that you went and got an HR consultant. I mean, with Highbeam, I talked to probably 1,000 brands a year. I've never actually, you don't really see that.
Really?
No, not often.
Though the companies actually, and I will plug them because I am so obsessed. They're called Woven HR, and they offer like fractional HR services to small businesses like ours and quickly growing companies. And we get, like a really experienced HR expert, but for like 3 hours a month.
And they've helped you become a better manager.
Truly been leadership coaching for me. Like Marisa, shout out to Marisa, who is our HR consultant. She will sit in with me and be like, listen, here's what I think you could have done better from what I'm hearing from this teammate. And here's how in your next few hires, like you can shift that behavior to make sure that the boundaries are much clearer, or the expectations are much more clearly set. It's been transformative. So even with our India team, so we hired a separate consultant for our India team. And we've, my managers in India, they have access to me and Win, but they're largely on their own, right? Because we're 12 and a half hours in a different time zone from them. And so our HR consultant is able to get on calls with all my managers and say, okay, you're struggling with, some complicated like interpersonal issue, and they'll talk them through them and through it and give them advice. So crucial.
Often it feels like psychology and not HR, right? Where you become the chief psychologist. How do you deal with that? I mean, I learned a lot in my career around that, where I was way more tolerant of that when I was younger than I am now. How do you draw the line on when you're like, okay, I'm not your psychologist, and nor is our HR person that I'm paying by the hour?
I think our HR person will bring me that flag and be like, I'm spending a lot of time with this person. And I'm like, yeah, that's not worth it to me. Like I don't need 6 billable hours to our HR person because like you got your feelings hurt about something that I don't think is that valuable. I do think that for me, all my business like mentors were straight white men, right? And I am not that. I am a queer brown immigrant to America. And so I think there was a real reckoning of, well, what kind of leadership am I aspiring to do and be then? Like, what model do I follow? Because the model that like you could follow probably won't work for me. I might not get cut slack. If I shout at somebody, I get called a bitch or bossy or any of those things. Like
Right.
there's all these other layers to it, right? So in trying to define what leadership looked like for myself, I think I've been like tooling around with the language, and I think my leadership style is very feminist, but it's also like very caring and compassionate and firm. So I know that there's a lot of things as a CEO that I'm not great at and I'm not cut out for, but I've realized that my EQ, which is very high, is actually made for people management. And I just had to lean into it, where I was like, you subconsciously and constantly are understanding people and like reacting to like the tiniest cues of their eyebrows. Okay, use that, right? So therefore, and I don't even like do it I'm not even trying to sound schemy. I think it's this is what the company needs. This is what the person needs for their growth and their happiness. And this is what like I think needs to happen to get there. Okay, how can you use like really high EQ and conversation and compassion to achieve all three of those goals? And it's been cool to like realize that for somebody who had imposter syndrome as a CEO for so long, to realize that being like an emotionally led CEO is actually probably my superpower.
Going back to that farmer that sent you what you
selfies.
thought was photos, yeah, exactly, that were inappropriate, and then realizing you were wrong all those years later.
Yeah.
Did that experience change how you sometimes, okay, you're reading the eyebrow moves and you're making you're using your EQ to your advantage? Did it change how you maybe validate to pressure test where you might be wrong?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing about being a young inexperienced founder is that you're wrong so much, right? Like I've been wrong a lot. And then you have no choice but to like own that and say, yep, I messed up. And I worked it as a line cook and in food service before I ran this company. So like I was a waitress for a long time. And one of my best friends and peers, he would start service at Chez Panisse, which is a wonderful restaurant here in Berkeley. And he would say, listen, we're all going to fuck up today. The most important thing is tell somebody you did, And that was like how we kicked off service. And I think I have held on to that like service mindset always, that I'm going to make like 12 mistakes today, but I'll tell somebody I did it and then I'll fix it. The recovery is ultimately the answer. I will also say that I do a lot of therapy. I have a psychiatrist and I'm on medication. So I've also done a lot of work on my own mental health in the past 9 years to like withstand, the pressure cooker that is running a company.
Sana, some amazing lessons that you serviced here. Thank you so much. A quick little lightning round of questions for you. What's a decision you're wrestling with right now?
Do we grow in grocery or do we grow in brick and mortar? Hard to say. I don't know.
Is it one or the other? Is it potentially both? Is it potentially neither?
If we want to do it well, it's kind of one or the other. Yeah. Like I think, we can do a little bit of grocery and grow big time into brick and mortar, or we can go big in grocery and just not do brick and mortar. But like when you're a small company who has not raised squillions, you also have to be thoughtful about what you can and can't do. And I can't do both. And I know that.
I think you're so right about that. We see a lot of founders get wrong is they don't understand that this is a cash conversion game. Exactly. It's a cash flow game, right? You can be profitable and broke. And if you try and do, the CapEx on opening new stores, the CapEx is the cost to open these new stores. And if you combine that with having to buy goods, send them to large retailers like Whole Foods, and have net 60 payments if you're lucky and they pay you on time.
Without chargebacks, maybe.
Without chargebacks from KE or Unify, exactly. Cool. Every mission-driven founder should.
Always remember why they're doing this and kind of check in about that constantly.
And then lastly, one tool or system you couldn't run your business without.
It's corny and I think everybody's the same, but Slack. Like I run a global team. Like we survive on Slack.
Is it what WhatsApp over or Slack over WhatsApp with your team, or?
WhatsApp is the norm in India, but we have moved everybody to Slack because we need an archive, right? Like I just need a record and I need it to be organized into channels. And when our COO has like set up like a 4-pager of like Slack protocol and like rules of how we operate within Slack. So we're pretty structured about how we do it and how you're expected to post in there. So it's not like instant message, like you use it very professionally and like for project management.
What led to that? Let's talk about that for a quick second here. That's interesting.
It was getting out of control, and that like people were like chit-chatting in instant like private messages in Slack, and we didn't have systems and we didn't have like documented processes. Projects were being squirreled away in different pieces and different DMs, and we needed to create structure and have like everything happen in one place. But at the same time, we have employees in India, across India, a little bit in the Middle East, a little bit in the UK, and across the US. So how do you manage that? Systems, documented SOPs.
And Utah, is it really just about SOPs when you want to post something about product quality control? It needs to go in this channel, or is it also here's what's appropriate way to use Slack, here's an inappropriate way to use Slack. Here's what you should expect in terms of responses.
There's a page on inappropriate and appropriate use and a whole page on tone, because, in writing, tone can be misunderstood all the time. And we want our team to give each other the benefit of the doubt. We also really prioritize like our team meeting up quarterly, because we found that it's the number one thing that avoids misunderstandings, right? So we are a fully remote team, but our different people from the US team go to India and meet the India team, and the India team meets all together more or less every quarter. And then what else would Slack? Like when we were doing new product development, people would like be squirreling all over with different information. And we now have a template, and it's like, this is the new product development template. You got to fill it out this way. If you don't have this information, it will not be discussed at the meeting. Until you get all this information, do not bring it to us. And because it was also about like, do not waste time on a call for what just needs to be put into like a Slack message or an email. Yeah. Lessening call load when you have a 12.5-hour time difference. Good.
We went through that at David's Tea as the business scaled and we opened more stores.
Yeah.
We used to, we were driving a lot of seasonality of the store. So your main displays, you're always turning over new product, new messaging. And it used to be just emails, like random emails to the stores. And then we had action sheets and it became broken telephone at a certain point. The larger you get, the harder it is to get everybody to understand the exact same amount of information and move in the right direction. Sana, this is amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and really excited for what's to come with Diaspora. And I think I'm going to leave this conversation and cook tonight and use a ton of spices.
Glad. Please do.
I've never been more excited to taste moringa. So
exactly.
but thank you so much. It's great.